You're fired.
We had a Monday night massacre.
In an extraordinary showdown, President Donald Trump dismisses the acting attorney general after she speaks out against his executive order on immigration. Empty seats. Democrats boycott voting for some cabinet nominees. We'll have a report from the Capitol about the votes that went on as scheduled. Immigration standstill. How Catholic social teaching impacts the right to migrate. And Vatican reaction. What Italy is doing as a sign of solidarity for Syrian refugees. We'll have a report from Vatican correspondent Mary Shovlin on EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, January 31st, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President Donald Trump's newly appointed acting attorney general tells the Justice Department to defend the president's executive order, temporarily halting immigration from 7 Muslim-majority countries. Now, this comes after the president fired his predecessor, Sally Yates, for refusing to enforce the order. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee has reaction from the White House.
Lauren, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer says Yates betrayed the Department of Justice. His comments came during a contentious press briefing today. Spicer says Yates' refusal to support Trump's executive order shows she wasn't serious about protecting the country as acting attorney general. That is drawing anger from Democrats.
We had a Monday night massacre.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer not happy after the president let go the acting U.S. Attorney General.
Sally Yates, a person of great integrity who follows the law, was fired.
She was fired after telling lawyers in the Justice Department not to defend Trump's executive order on immigration and refugees. The White House responded today.
We went through the process. The Office of Legal Compliance came back and said this is a compliant executive order, it's fully legal, and it can be executed. So then for the Attorney General to turn around and say, I'm not going to uphold this lawful executive order is clearly a dereliction of duty, and she should have been removed, and she was.
Senator Jeff Sessions of Alabama, Trump's pick for Attorney General, asked Yates about enforcing the law during her own confirmation hearing in 2015.
Do you think the Attorney General has a responsibility to say no to the president if he asks for something that's improper?
Senator, I believe that the Attorney General or the Deputy Attorney General has an obligation to follow the law and the Constitution and to give their independent legal advice to the president.
Replacing Yates is Dana Bente, the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. He was also appointed by President Obama. Bente has already called for the Justice Department to back Trump's order. Democrats protested President Trump's order last night, but many Americans who helped elect Trump support the ban.
He has shown to be a man of his word. He's going to do what he says and says what he does. And that's a little frightening for some people because they didn't like everything he said. I, on the other hand, supported him.
Sean Spicer strongly denied calling Trump's executive order a ban. He says it has temporarily inconvenienced some people trying to visit the United States. Instead, he calls it extreme vetting. He says while some have been inconvenienced, it's worth it to protect American lives. Lauren?
Wyatt, last night the president also fired the acting head of ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Is that connected to Yates' firing?
It's not clear at this point, Lauren, although some people have wondered about that. At this point, the White House has not put out any formal explanation or connection to that other firing. The only thing that White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer said today is that the Executive Associate Director, Thomas Homeland, will take over as acting chief. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsbee at the White House. Thank you. Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly says he was given details of the president's executive order on immigration, despite media reports to the contrary. Secretary Kelly also stressed what the order is not.
This is not, I repeat, not a ban on Muslims. The Homeland Security mission is to safeguard the American people, our homeland, our values, and religious liberty is one of our most fundamental and treasured values.
Kelly told reporters he looked at 2 drafts of the order before the Friday signing and that high-level government lawyers and agency officials were involved in drafting it. House Speaker Paul Ryan defends President Trump's order, even though he admits the rollout caused some confusion.
Look, the president has a responsibility to the security of this country. Go back. Remember when we had the Paris shooting? Remember when we heard about credible intelligence that ISIS was trying to infiltrate refugee populations? We need to pause, and we need to make sure that the vetting standards are up to snuff so we can guarantee the safety and security of our country.
Ryan warned lawmakers backlash from the travel ban could lead to more protests in their districts. Democrats block votes in the Senate for 2 of President Trump's cabinet nominees, saying they need more information on past financial behavior. That means the fates of Congressman Tom Price, the nominee for Health and Human Services, and Steve Mnuchin for Treasury are in limbo. Correspondent Jason Calvi is on Capitol Hill. Jason.
Lauren, it was supposed to be a Senate Finance Committee vote to advance the nominees to the full Senate. But instead, Democrats skipped the vote and called an impromptu press conference saying they need more time to ask more questions. And that enraged Republicans.
This is the most pathetic thing I've seen in my whole time in the United States Senate.
The longest-serving current Republican senator looks at empty chairs. Democrats ditched today's vote to advance 2 nominees, citing a report in the Wall Street Journal that Representative Tom Price, that's Donald Trump's pick to lead the Health and Human Services Department, received a discounted offer to buy stock in a biomedical company.
He misled the Congress.
Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon wants more information.
The congressman has consistently insisted that he didn't get special access to a special deal. Now we have reports that the company says otherwise.
As for Treasury nominee Steve Mnuchin, Democrats said no to his vote, citing a Columbus Dispatch article questioning how his bank handled home foreclosures. Senate Finance Committee rules say 13 members of the panel, including at least 1 Democrat, must be present for votes. Republicans, including Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy, are crying foul.
I think it's retaliation because they're mad about the election.
Down the crowded hallway,
No decision.
protesters urge a no vote on President Trump's pick to be the next Attorney General.
No to the ban on refugees, and no to Jeff Sessions. No Jeff Sessions.
Inside the Senate Judiciary hearing room, Democrats struck a confrontational tone. Senator Dianne Feinstein attacked Sessions' pro-life views.
As Attorney General, who says he believes a woman's well-established fundamental rights are unconstitutional, is essentially inviting states to pass more restrictions.
But Republicans, like Ohio Senator Chuck Grassley, are standing behind their colleague.
Because we know him to be a man of his word, we know that he will uphold and enforce all laws.
And Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley says their vote will be delayed until tomorrow. Just another surprise in this day of surprises here at the Capitol. Lauren?
It has been busy. Jason, what is the likelihood, though, of these nominations actually getting to the full Senate for a vote?
The big question right now is really just when will the Finance Committee vote on these 2 delays of Mnuchin and Price? The Democrats don't have the votes really to stop it. So once there is this actual vote, we're expecting it to go forward to the full Senate, and then the full Senate will have the chance to vote and debate on both of these nominees as well.
But first, we have to get a Democrat into that hearing room. All right, Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill. Thank you very much. The Senate has confirmed Elaine Chao to serve as Transportation Secretary. She will be responsible for $1 trillion budget to improve infrastructure. She was Labor Secretary under President George W. Bush and is the wife of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. He abstained by voting present. The full Senate can now review President Trump's nomination for Education Secretary. That's after a Senate committee voted today along party lines in favor of Betsy DeVos. She supports charter schools and school choice, which would benefit Catholic schools. Another Senate committee approved former Texas Governor Rick Perry as Energy Secretary and Representative Ryan Zinke for Interior. President Trump says he won't roll back federal workplace protections for gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people. It's a rare nod of approval to President Barack Obama. President Trump continues to be respectful and supportive of LGBTQ rights, just as he was throughout the election, and that's according to this White House statement. The announcement comes just hours before President Trump is to announce his pick for the Supreme Court. That nominee, if confirmed by the Senate, would have a say in potential court challenges to the redefinition of marriage. The Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage in 2015, but efforts are underway in some states to try to restrict the scope of that decision. Republican leaders say in the House say President Trump's first week in office was, quote, very significant for pro-life Americans.
We passed historic legislation making permanent the Hyde Amendment, a bill that was very bipartisan, a bill that most Americans support, the idea that taxpayer money should not go towards financing and funding abortion. And then we saw hundreds of thousands of people come to Washington for the March for Life.
Vice President Mike Pence made history as the first vice president to participate in the march. The March for Life is held every year on or near the anniversary of the 1973 Supreme Court decision legalizing abortion. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering in today's world. British lawmakers begin a two-day debate on a bill authorizing the start of European Union exit talks. The minister in charge of Brexit had a warning for lawmakers.
We asked the people of the UK if they wanted to leave the European Union. They decided they did. So at the core of this bill lies a very simple question. Do we trust the people or not?
That statement sparked a lively debate in Parliament.
Isn't the reason that the government finds itself in a position of such abasement to the President Trump is that they have decided to abandon the high ground of the single marketplace without so much as a negotiating word being spoken.
Ministers hope the Brexit bill can be pushed through both houses of Parliament by early March so the government can meet its March 31st deadline. The man accused of killing 6 people at a Canadian mosque was known for his extreme nationalist views. Investigators say Alexandre Bissonnette started shooting Muslim men gathered for evening prayers at the Quebec Islamic Cultural Center on Sunday. The French-Canadian university student had never been in trouble with police, but those who monitor extremist groups say they knew Bissonnette because of his comments on social media. Canada's Prime Minister calls Sunday's shooting an act of terrorism. The leader of the European Union puts the United States in a threat category along with Russia and China, insisting President Trump is making their future highly unpredictable. This comes as Italy embraces more migrants. Vatican correspondent Mary Shovlin reports from Rome.
Officials from the Italian government and the Catholic Church welcomed 41 Syrian refugees at Rome's airport on Monday. It's a sign of solidarity as the U.S. temporarily halts refugee admissions. These refugees from Syria are part of what's being called a humanitarian corridor. It was organized by Christian groups to bring refugees safely into the country and save them from dangerous trips across the Mediterranean. They are relieved and grateful. Ahmad Al-Khaled came with his wife and 3 young children. He says he hopes every country will be as welcoming as Italy. The Vatican is concerned about refugees here in Italy and beyond.
This is not an American issue. This is not a Western European issue. This is going on all over the world, and the Church all over the world wants to respond.
The United Nations says governments have the right to secure their borders, but refugees are their concern.
What we're concerned about, enormously so, is the fate of those vulnerable migrants, vulnerable refugees who've already been through the process, been through the security tests.
The world is seeing an historic amount of people on the move. And as the U.S. pauses to review its immigration policies, refugees here are just glad they have found an open door. In Rome, Mary Shovlin, EWTN News Nightly.
Pope Francis says we must keep our eyes fixed on Jesus and we will be completely astonished by what happens.
Cammino davanti, fisso lo sguardo su Gesù.
During his morning homily at his residence, the Holy Father references the Gospel of Mark when Jesus healed a woman who touched his mantle in a crowd. He says, walk with our eyes fixed on Jesus. He is always in that crowd. Coming up, one issue, two viewpoints. We'll delve into Catholic teaching when it comes to immigration. President Trump won the Catholic vote, and pro-life leaders praised his early move to ban federal funds for international groups performing abortions. However, his executive order on immigration is controversial for many Catholics. In a statement, Bishop Joe Vasquez, the chairman of the Committee on Migration for the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, denounced the move, saying, in part, "We will work vigorously to ensure that refugees are humanely welcomed without sacrificing our security or our core values as Americans." Joining us now is Chad Pecknold, Associate Professor of Theology at Catholic University of America. Welcome back to the program.
Always good to be with you.
This is a very controversial topic. The United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, as we just heard, is not happy with this. And on their website, they put out 3 basic Catholic social teaching principles. One, that people have the right to migrate to sustain their lives or those of their family. And then 2, that a country has the right to regulate its borders. Aren't those 2 things at odds?
Yeah, in a perfect world, they shouldn't be at odds because really they are both upholding the individual good and the communal good, right? And the individual good and the communal good should fit together in a well-ordered society. But actually, we don't have a well-ordered society now. We have a conflict in which human persons are not, the dignity of a human person in the womb is not being respected. We've got a crisis in America around the person. We've also got a communal crisis of guarding the common good. And this is part of our refugee crisis, is that we're accepting more people into this country than any other country in the world. And it's a threat to our national security, a threat to our sense of a common purpose. And so these 2 duties are at odds right now.
Let's look at what Speaker of the House Paul Ryan had to say today. He talked about protecting the border.
I support the refugee resettlement program. We're a generous country. It's important. But we can be generous and watch our national security at the same time.
So is that the point that you're making? What Paul Ryan is saying is that there is this balance?
I think the point is, Paul Ryan is right to say we are a generous country. We have to be a country that is morally admirable. Right? We want to be a morally admirable, but that means that we have to get our house in order. We have to be a virtuous people. We have to, in a sense, establish a sense of a common good, and that is precisely what is in crisis right now.
So the USCCB third principle says that a country must regulate its borders with justice and mercy. Yeah. How is justice and mercy defined?
Yeah, I think in a sense the USCCB's interest is especially to preserve families, to keep families together, to advocate for some due process rights that they actually don't have right now under our laws, to actually ensure that displaced persons are treated with respect and dignity. This is the fundamental principle, is really respect for the human person.
Is it fair to compare church teachings on life and the unborn to immigration? Simply because when it comes to life issues, we know that there is no right and wrong. There's only wrong when it comes to abortion, and that's what the church says. On immigration, it seems so much more muddy.
It's complex because with the right to life, Pope Francis says the right to life is the first among human rights. Now, the duty to care for the stranger who comes from without is also there, but that's a duty to care which always comes in tension with communal duties to one's neighbors in your own country. And so there's a kind of muddiness of prudential reasoning. Where do you draw the line when that duty to care for your neighbor comes into conflict with your common good? With the person in the womb, they're essential to the common good. They're not in conflict with the common good. So there's really an absolute kind of priority on the unborn.
And this is prudential judgment, is the term that we're using, prudential judgment, yeah. Taking in all of this into account.
We take into all of that into account as we measure up the principles in conflict.
All right, thank you so much. Chad Pecknold, Associate Professor of Theology at the Catholic University of America. The Vatican and volunteers are comforting the homeless who are under great duress due to Italy's cold snap. Volunteers have opened the Vatican's San Calixtus Church as a temporary night shelter. They're providing tea and warm clothing, cots. And since the stone floor is so cold, they've brought in electric heaters. They've been placed on the floor. 3 men and 2 women living on the streets of Rome so far have died due to the unusually cold winter. Up next, President Trump announces his pick tonight for Supreme Court. How could that judge shape the nation for years to come? We're just hours away from a major announcement. President Trump is revealing his pick for the Supreme Court tonight at 8 p.m. 3 federal appeals court judges are reportedly among the finalists: William Pryor, Neil Gorsuch, and Thomas Hardiman. Trump is filling the vacancy created by the death of Antonin Scalia, a Catholic who was praised for his defense of life. And joining us now is Tiffany Bates with the Heritage Foundation to talk about this. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. The 2 really are Gorsuch and
Thomas Hardiman.
Hardiman.
Yes.
Tell me why those 2 are in the final running.
So I think the president doesn't want a huge fight on his Supreme Court nominee, and Hardiman and Gorsuch, while they still certainly will be a fight, won't be as much of a fight as someone like Bill Pryor.
Right, who has been rumored to be one of the 3rd picks, but today it's pretty much confirmed that he's not going to be one of the 2.
Yes, that's right.
So tell me about Mr. Gorsuch. Tell me about what is good with him as it comes to issues of life and religious liberty.
Sure. So Neil Gorsuch is a judge who really strives to put the law and the Constitution above his policy preferences, and he has a demonstrated record in favor of religious liberty in particular. He ruled in favor of religious liberty in both Obamacare contraception mandate cases, Hobby Lobby and the Little Sisters of the Poor, when they were in his court.
And he wrote a book, The Future of Assisted Suicide and Euthanasia.
Yes, and so while he hasn't ruled on abortion issues, he did write this book before he became a judge, affirming the right to life and the inherent dignity of human beings.
Okay, the Democrats are suggesting a filibuster to block those nominees. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about the gentleman from Pennsylvania and what his take is on the issues of life and religious liberty.
Sure. So Thomas Hardiman from the 3rd Circuit in Pennsylvania would also be a great choice. He hasn't written a lot on life or religious liberty issues, and that may just be because those issues haven't come before him in his court. But he has a lot of other strong opinions on things like the Second Amendment. And we know that his approach to applying the law as written and upholding the Constitution is strong.
What about the filibuster? How likely is that to happen?
Well, Senator Schumer has initially announced that they're going to put up a fight, whoever the nominee is, although there seems to be a little bit of backtracking now. I don't think that they can sustain a filibuster against either of these nominees. During their lower court confirmations, Gorsuch wasn't even controversial enough to get a counted vote. He passed with a voice vote. And Thomas Hardiman passed through 95-0, including having Chuck Schumer's vote.
There you go, boy. These 2 then would be likely to be named later this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Tiffany Bates with the Heritage Foundation.
Thank you for having me.
For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget, you can see every broadcast of the show on EWTN's YouTube channel. I'll see you again tomorrow. Good night, and God bless.